Most of us have had a pet at some point in our lives. Most of us bond with animals because we see how wonderful, benevolent, and helpful these creatures are. I want you to picture your pet at home. Got it? Good. Now imagine your beloved pet was traumatically taken from your home, injured, and shoved into a tiny, filthy cage where they sustain multiple injuries and catch and spread painful diseases before finally being anally electrocuted or even skinned alive. You wouldn't want that to happen to your pet, so why is it any different for a fox, an alligator, a mink, an ostrich, or even another dog or cat like your own? Every year, 1.5 billion animals are killed for fur. 139 million animals are killed for leather, and thousands of endangered animals are killed in Africa every day for their pelts, not to mention the sizable detriment that it has on our environment. I've been passionate about animals all of my life. I've grown up with them, and when I was little and someone asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I told them I wanted to be a vegetarian veterinarian. Although my career aspirations have changed, my passion for animals has never faltered, and it stayed with me throughout my whole life. I've been a vegetarian for 6 years, so at least my 6-year-old self will know that she completed part of that task. I volunteer with Greenpeace. I work with an organization that trains service dogs for wounded veterans. I send multiple emails to government officials, CEOs, and fur farm owners on behalf of PETA to urge them to cut ties with the fur industry. And I completed a 3-month-long project for school on ethics, animal ethics, environmental ethics, and a lot of that dealt with the fur industry. So I'm well versed on the topic, not to mention the research I did for this project in particular. The only way to end the suffering to the animals and to the environment caused by the fur and pelt industry is to stop purchasing their products. The fur industry is responsible for the brutal, deplorable torture of millions and trillions of animals who died for what any rational person would consider an extremely frivolous and trivial reason. However, ignorance, capitalism, and greed continue to fuel the fire that not only burns the animals, but scorches us as well. The only way we can end the suffering is to cut off the demand that we supply for these products. Simple as that. Earlier in my speech, I mentioned some of the ways that these animals were horribly treated, but unfortunately that barely scratches the surface of the injustices that these animals suffer at the hands of humans. Let's start from the beginning. If the powers that be decide that they want a certain animal to be turned into a coat and that animal is not found on a fur farm, then they're going to need to hunt the animal in the wild. This means that the animal will spend up to 15 minutes slowly and agonizingly suffocating. And if the animal is semi-aquatic, they have traps designed to do the same exact thing except slowly drown them, and maybe even longer. However, if the animal is raised on a fur farm, their suffering is drawn out far longer. According to the Last Chance for Animals organization, the vast majority of animals killed are raised on fur farms and kept in deplorable conditions. Minks and foxes are naturally wild animals that do not adapt to life in captivity. Wild mink instinctively range a territory of approximately 741 acres in size. In contrast, ranch-raised mink are often confined to a 12 by 18-inch cage. This type of intense confinement can result in self-mutilation, cannibalism, and high-level stress that weakens the immune system and makes the animal far more susceptible to disease. If your sense of morality is ineffectual enough for these facts to leave you unswayed, then perhaps you should consider the costly environmental impact of the hide industry that has not only on our planet but also on our health. Most leather produced in the US and around the world is chrome tanned. The Environmental Protection Agency considers all waste containing chromium to be hazardous, so all tanning produces hazardous waste. According to the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, The disastrous consequences of these noxious waste fumes is a threat to human health from the highly elevated levels of lead, cyanide, and formaldehyde in the groundwater near tanneries. In Bangladesh, which exports leather goods to the United States, chemical exposure and equipment accidents poses such a great hazard that workers, many of them children, aren't expected to live beyond the age of 50. In addition, the study that tested tannery workers in Sweden and Italy found that their cancer rates were between 20 and 50% above those expected. Any contribution, monetary or otherwise, that makes you part of the fur and hide industries does not only make you responsible for the death of these animals, but it makes you personally responsible for the death of these people. If the fur and hide industry is so awful, then why is it still thriving? To answer that question, you need to understand the key players of the industry: the farmers, the distributors, and the consumers. Just like any industry, there's somebody who provides the materials, someone who distributes them, and the consumers who buy them. In the US, there is no restriction on fur farms dealing in mink or foxes, and hardly any restrictions on the treatment of these animals. The fur farms make more money for larger quality pelts, and according to PETA, electrocuting fur-bearing animals anally or genitally is an agonizing slaughter method that is frequently used in order to limit the damage to their fur so they can make more money for the larger pelts with less damage. This is how the fur farms capitalize on their profit margins. The pelts of these animals are often marked as a luxury item and are still sold by fashion houses like Louis Vuitton, Dior, and Balenciaga. These designers profit off public ignorance surrounding fur. Most of the people who can understand what these animals go through and know the reality of the fur industry don't support it. Hopefully by now you are sufficiently motivated to put an end to the fur, hide, and pelt industry globally. But how would we go about doing this, and is this even a realistic goal? Luckily for us, it is not a hopeless goal to expect reform in the US. In 2019, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed into action Article AB 44, which prohibits the sale of fur in California. This is amazing because, as many of you know, a significant percentage of the people who buy fur from these luxury designers are located in California. Additionally, many huge influential fashion houses have pledged to go fur-free, including Gucci, Versace, Prada, and Calvin Klein. We as Americans like to consider America as the benchmark in innovation and progress. However, in this essential issue, we are woefully behind. In 2000, nearly 20 years ago, the UK was the first country to outlaw the breeding and killing of animals for fur on ethical grounds. Other countries that followed were Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia, Serbia, the Republic of Macedonia, and recently the Czech Republic. Similar legislation is currently being considered in Belgium, Germany, and Luxembourg. So, what can you do to help liberate these animals from this torture? Well, there's many things. First, you can follow PETA's campaigns on their website or their app. The only way to put an end to the many gruesome and vile horrors that the animals endure at fur farms is to stop supporting the farms and the distributors of these products and start fighting for legislation that eradicates the practice. At fur farms, these animals are often inbred, and while alive, they are susceptible to disease, starve, and when they're killed, the common methods of slaughter often include bludgeoning, hanging, starvation, and most common in the US, anal electrocution, so that the fur isn't damaged. Shockingly, a large number of these peaceful and innocent animals are often skinned alive, sometimes in periodic intervals so that hair and skin growth will continue, so they'll get more hair and skin out of each animal. No animal is safe from these horrors, and some are even being driven to extinction. The largest impediment to stopping the fur industry is the ignorance, the fashion houses, and China's gasoline on the fire approach when it comes to the fur industry and the mistreatment of animals. However, there is a light forming at the end of the tunnel, with multiple fashion houses pledging to go fur-free and multiple nations doing the same. However, we still need you to do your part to end the fur, hide, and pelt trade. I will leave you with this quote. Killing an animal to make a coat is a sin. It wasn't meant to be, and we have no right to do it. A woman gains status when she refuses to see anything killed to be put on her back. That is when she is truly beautiful. Doris Day.